Hey guys, we have to talk about the building scandals that many scientists have reported about. Akis Tilentis was very big about this. I have released a video about this, so check it in my playlist about Santorini. But now the inspection reports have come out, and that is really not good, what the results are ahead of tourist season. So that major earthquake swarm that has rattled Santorini basically since the end of January is dying down when it comes to the number of earthquakes, but we are still seeing larger ones. The magnitudes, we haven't seen something like 5 for quite a few days, but it's still there. So it hasn't gone away completely. So illegal hotels, pools, and hot tubs. How the experts are calling this, Santorini's building crimes are a disaster waiting to happen. And it seems that especially the hotel owners have used a loophole. I don't even know if I would call it a loophole, because they were kind of like not telling the truth about their buildings in order to fall into a different category to avoid restrictions and building codes. So this is interesting, guys. So Santorini is a very popular tourist destination for those of you who don't know it. 3.5 million people approximately come to Santorini. For that little island, that's a lot. And they have discovered dozens of illegal buildings that could be at risk in the event of future earthquakes. And we still have the rattling going on right now. The Greek Ministry of Environment and Energy has released its findings just right now. And they have done inspections already in October and November last year. And Akis Tilentis, for example, and these scientists are pointing towards the fact that there might be even more. So Akis Tilentis is basically saying almost 100%. So the authorities have discovered that many of the hotels and the tourist accommodations on the island had falsely registered as pre-1955 structures to bypass stringent regulations. That's a bummer, because that means, there might not be really safe. But it also means, okay, there are older buildings on the island that are also tourist destinations and accommodations, and they don't even need stricter regulations. So remember why Santorini has this crescent-shaped form. That's a caldera. That's the edge of a volcano, of an ancient volcano. And they want to preserve their iconic white cliffside buildings because they're the tourist attraction. Swim in a pool that has an overhang on the cliff. You look straight down. Well, it looks really cool. But is it really safe? Because the problem is, even on these cliffside buildings where the regulations are the tightest, illegal construction has been found. So among the buildings that they have identified in this report was a tourist accommodation located in the caldera's protected zone that has approved its size. And they have gotten a fine of 191,000 euros. But the size, is it too much for that cliff? Remember Akis Tilentis, he said, and others said the foundations are not correct, they're not to code, many buildings are illegal, or they have cut corners because it was a building boom, they needed as many buildings for tourists as possible. So they're giving dire warnings because these cliffs are volcanic, so they're not super stable. And then they found other buildings. And remember, this was before the earthquake swarm. So there could be some more damage. They're conducting inspections right now because there are risks of landslides. They have discovered that famous cable car that goes down almost straight down that cliff down to the old port has been weakened by this current earthquake swarm. If it's for 4 weeks at least, rumbling continuously, a continuous tremor, that loosens things. If I have a fence post in the ground and I constantly keep nagging on it and shaking on it, it gets loose. Fortunately, that's a problem that I have on my farm because the horses do that with the posts. So I have constant earthquakes on my fence post. So they found other buildings. For example, they have installed hot tubs and swimming pools that have violated protection laws of these cliffs. So altogether, they have issued a lot of fines, almost €1 million, in relation to illegal developments in areas near the caldera. But what I would like to hear, have they closed down these places? So new rules mean illegal structures can be removed if they violate Santorini's protection laws. So they're worried about the protection law of the island. We're not talking about the protection of the tourists. So owners can be given 30 days from the date a decision is made to take it down. So we will see what's going to happen. They also want to increase protection of the island. So they are investing €130 million in satellite images and AI to better identify constructions of concern. So like spying on illegal construction. So they hope that they will have that system operational by summer 2026. But again, the Greek seismologist Akis Tsilentis has posted, and he still is posting this on social media, highlighting how he calls it, urban building crimes on Santorini. And he says it's the man's greed for profit that blinds him. And he does not see that he lives or invests in an environment within which there are 2 active volcanoes and a seismic fault beyond. And he's right. And we kind of have that problem in Italy with Campi Flegrei, where they want to build a huge billion euro of investment next to the Solfatara, I think an hotel. I've reported about this in my other videos. So why are these buildings illegal? Being illegal, is the one thing, but are they structurally safe? Probably not, right? If they haven't gone through the proper channels. So first, Santorini thought to limit development on the island following that devastating earthquake that happened in 1956, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake that was followed by a magnitude 6.9 earthquake. And much of the island's infrastructure was destroyed after that earthquake and has even triggered a small volcanic eruption. So the rebuilding effort was guided by strict regulations that solely aimed to preserve its unique architectural heritage. It looks really pretty with these white buildings on the cliffs, and I'm pretty sure many tourists are not aware what Santorini is or could be, again, a monster. I have just released a video about this, how powerful Santorini is. You should really check it out. And what would happen if Santorini had a large eruption again? That would affect the whole world. The US, everyone. It has in the past, and not for a short period of time, for several years. So watch the video in the end screen, guys. It's really very interesting. So, but then what happened after the earthquake? Well, in the 1980s, Santorini's tourism began to boom. Development picked up the pace, and in an attempt to accommodate all these tourists, this influx of visitors, the local authorities tightened up building regulations to control the scale and the style of new constructions, and also to limit where these structures would be built. That sounds all good, but fast forward a few more decades, and Santorini is bursting at the seams. In 2023, 3.5 million tourists arrived on the island, and only 25,000 people live permanently on Santorini. So they had days where on one day, more than 17,000 cruise ship passengers would descend on the locals. And that has prompted the government to implement caps and fees for the next year's arrivals. So along with this surge in visitors, there has been a huge surge in development because they wanted to make money. So for example, in 2023, the authorities have issued 470 building permits. That's a lot for that small island. And then further 300 permits for renovations on the island. And that has caused huge concern among locals and conservationists. But also people like Akis Tsilentis, who said it's not safe, guys. You're crazy. And we have the same in Campi Flegrei, where the seasoned scientists that even work for the INGV and the Vesuvius Observatory are saying, can't we at least evacuate the red zone right now, where we have this bradyseism escalating? Many people are trying to make it publicly known. They're saying we live in a place with barely 25,000 souls, and we don't need any more hotels or any more rented rooms. That's what the mayor of Santorini, Nikos Tsotsos, has said in an interview just recently. And he said, if you destroy the landscape, one as rich as ours, you destroy the very reason people come here in the first place. But unfortunately, this is the case in many places. Cities that were beautiful, that were nice, then the building boom starts, and then, it all goes south. Because everyone, of course, many people want to go to places that are really beautiful. But if you take that beauty away, and then they will end up someday when people will stop coming because it's just not nice anymore. So they have made attempts to curb development. The Environmental Ministry announced a suspension of all building licenses in the caldera of Santorini and the nearby island of Terazia in August 2024. So this suspension covers only new buildings, extensions of new buildings, and the addition of swimming pools and hot tubs. And the swimming pools especially, there are oh my God, that's what the tourists want, having a swimming pool on the cliff. But many of them, according to Akis Silentis, are not safe. And then if the earthquakes shake, the water starts shaking, and this adds to more instability. I can give you an example for those of you who know my channel. I have a farm with horses and animals. So I'm carrying around water buckets in the bucket of my tractor, like water troughs, bigger ones. And sometimes if a hose fails, that brings the water to the pasture, or if it's frozen or whatever, I have to drive the water out. And then I have this bucket, and the water trough is in the bucket and it's full with water. And then if I drive and my tractor starts shaking, the water starts shaking. And sometimes it shakes so violently that it makes the water trough flip over and fall out of my tractor bucket. And that's what I fear for these cliffhanger pools that are there in Santorini. And when these earthquakes happened, they also told people there, drain your pools, get the water out. Part of the crackdown is also that local planning authorities were tasked with reviewing all building permits that were issued in the previous 5 years, and also inspecting the island for unauthorized developments. And why is illegal building a concern for the earthquake-prone Santorini? It's part of the volcanic Hellenic Arc, a highly active tectonic region. And again, the island itself is the remnant of a massive volcanic eruption that occurred roughly 1600 BC, one of the largest in recorded history. And again, I made a video about what will happen if that happens again. And we know there's a magma chamber underneath Santorini, and they have discovered a land rise. I'm not saying that an eruption like this is happening in the near future, but what if? So the development, of course, doesn't directly cause these earthquakes, not at all. But unchecked and illegal buildings could have catastrophic consequences if there only was tectonic activity, not even volcanic. Many of these buildings in the caldera are clinging to the side of the cliffs. You see it here in the pictures. They're called like glodite homes, like built-in caves dug into the cliffside. And the thing is, they're digging into the cliffside further down, and then they're undermining the buildings that are above them. And then we have the weight of these pools when they're full, and all the hot tubs. That is a risk of destabilizing the ground. So the seismologists warn that this overdevelopment could increase the risk of devastating landslides and structural collapse during an earthquake, but also after these earthquakes if there's heavy rain, because many structures right now could have been weakened. The cliff the whole cliff could be weak by this constant tremor. So they say new unregulated buildings may not be adequately designed to withstand seismic events. They haven't been inspected. They haven't been built to codes, most likely. They have been built quickly to make money as quick as possible. A professor of geology at the University of Athens, Dimitris Papanikolaou, he says, quote, "They wanted to develop the island and didn't pay attention to environmental but also safety issues. Nothing should have been built in this zone," he says, and he's referring to these soft volcanic soils that make up the cliffs of the caldera. Imagine that all these buildings and hotels and that they slide down with the whole side of that cliff. That would be catastrophic. Because even before the recent earthquakes, the concerns were emerging more and more for Santorini's structural safety. So there was another report in 2021 by the Hellenic Society for Environment and Cultural Heritage, and this report said the safety of the buildings on the caldera urgently needed to be assessed. Many buildings had no permits, and at least a quarter of these buildings were tourism businesses. But they have even flagged concerns for buildings that even had a building permit, where they said they have been built in unsuitable areas. So this really sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. But there's more. Building permits were granted and homes or structures were built in Fira, in Oya, and Alachua, like heavy construction on these cliff sites, including hotels with the swimming pools on the slopes towards the sea, like almost vertical cliffs. Underneath the traditional settlements with faulty foundations. A relatively small earthquake, according to Akis Tilentis, these won't collapse right away. They haven't, right? But they'll slide right into the sea. That's what he's saying. To me, that is collapsing, right? They will collapse eventually when they arrive somewhere on the bottom. So he says, I would ask politicians to prioritize science and do seismological assessments. If they want to contribute, let them trample urban illegalities by turning deaf ears to hotel interests and letting scientists do their job. He was angry. He was also angry he was part of a committee formed during that recent seismic swarm of scientists, and he resigned from that because he said the government sent their representatives to stir the pot. And he said they should have not be there. They're not scientists. So he was really upset. For now, we know that it started around February 15th, that the seismic activity, that massive swarm between Santorini and Amorgos, has been gradually declining. So the tremors are now less frequent, less intense. And we've had more than, we're reaching 25,000 earthquakes in just a time frame of roughly 4 weeks. And that is crazy. Each one of them, even if it's a smaller tremor, could have damaged the cliffs, making the rocks more brittle and prone to landslides. Damaged foundations, loosened foundations, if you're on a cliff. And we've had several that have exceeded 5.0, up to 5.3. So many might ask the question now, since tourist season's coming up and some people even have bookings, is it safe to visit Santorini? There has not been an official instruction not to travel to Santorini or the neighboring islands, either from the Greek government or other European governments. There have been some travel warnings during that earthquake swarm. The EU says, we advise you to exercise caution if your visit is planned, and they're urging travelers to keep up to date with the latest news from Greece. But are people really able to evaluate that? Are they really following events that closely as we've been doing it like multiple times a day for the last 4 weeks? They're advising visitors to specifically stay away from old and abandoned buildings. Yeah, that makes sense. And avoid large indoor gatherings. In the event of a strong tremor, they're saying stay away from several ports, and they're naming them all, as they could be at risk of a tsunami if there's a larger earthquake, plus a landslide. Slowly, the population of Santorini, the ones that have left, is also returning to the island after almost 10,000 evacuated when the earthquake started. And early reports do suggest that tourists have started to arrive as well, despite the fact that we still have the earthquakes. So the island, of course, the tourism industry of the island is hopeful of getting back to normal in time for peak season. Akis is really telling the people, he says, nature can take revenge if we do not respect it. The growth of tourism is nice, but the earthquake comes to remind us that it's not only humans who are in charge on the planet. That's a very good sentence. So the question is it wise to come back for the residents? It's really hard to tell, because they need to live their lives as well, and they probably want to prepare for tourist season. So we will have to wait and see, guys. I hope you liked this video. If you did, leave it a like, guys. Share it with your friends. Subscribe if you're new here. And if you want to support the channel, become a supporting channel member. You just have to click the join button or go to the link in the description. And if you want to buy me some coffee, for example, go to my buymeacoffee.com/silky site. The link is also in the description of this video. And thank you so much for doing that, guys. Very, very grateful for all the members that recently have signed up, and for my members, I don't want to say older, but long-term members. You guys are absolutely great. Thank you so much for your support, for the supers you're sending me here, and for the coffees that keep me going and are helping my animals greatly right now. So I hope to see you soon. And for my silver level members, I just released a new video. I think I have 2 new stars that are born. So check that out in the membership playlist for silver level members. I see you very soon, guys. Bye-bye.